Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have the unsurpassed glory to extend the Prime Minister's statement on the official visit to St. Lucia of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and Commander of its armed forces, His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He paid a historic visit to St. Lucia, given the importance of this diplomatic engagement for St. Lucia and the unfortunate misinformation and criticisms that have been leveled at it by spokespersons and surrogates for the members opposite. It is necessary that I deliver this statement to this Honorable House to clear up the falsehoods that are being perpetrated by those of a political conviction and persuasion very different to ours on this side of the House. Mr. Speaker, the visit of President Tinubu to St. Lucia is rooted in the progressive foreign policy that this government has been pursuing since it came into office in July 2021. In the manifesto of the St. Lucia Labour Party for the 2021 general elections, it was declared in the section on external relations on page 29, and I quote, "Recognizing the strength of strategic alliances with countries and regional and international organizations as an avenue for the advancement of our people's interests, a St. Lucia Labour Party will continue building on existing relations with foreign governments and organizations and seek to build new alliances," unquote. Mr. Speaker, it is in this context of building these new alliances that the visit of the Nigerian president must be seen. Our focus on building these new alliances could not be Eurocentric, but had to be with the hitherto untapped continents and lands of the South. South-South cooperation had to be the essential factor, and the continent of Africa, our motherland, had to be central to this policy. We make no apologies for that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the first, most concrete and tangible symbol of this was St. Lucia's rapprochement with Saudi Arabia, which led to the loan from the Saudi Development Fund on the 3rd of August 2023 for the completion of the St. Jude's Hospital project and rebuilding or refurbishing the National Stadium. On 8th August 2023, the Cabinet of Ministers considered and approved a memorandum from the Ministry of External Affairs, International Trade, Civil Aviation and Diaspora Affairs to expand relations with the countries of the African continent. I repeat, Mr. Speaker, on the 8th of August 2023, the Cabinet of Ministers considered and approved a memorandum from the Ministry of External Affairs, International Trade, Civil Aviation and Diaspora Affairs to expand relations with the countries of the African continent. The memo argued, and I quote, "Historical and current circumstances suggest that St. Lucia should do much more with those 9 African states which it currently had relations, and the African continent in general. Quite apart from the affinities of history and culture, which requires an equivocal identification and solidarity on the part of St. Lucia, there is the acknowledgement that the continent boasts the youngest demographic and some of the fastest growing economies in the world. And there is also recognition that the potential for economic benefit from a relationship with the continent is limitless. In respect of West Africa, the countries proposed for attention in the initial period are Nigeria and Ghana," unquote. The Cabinet of Ministers, in its conclusion, 605 of 14th of August 2023, 1. Endorsed the following proposed strategy and framework to guide St. Lucia's engagement with the African continent, pursue a relationship with the African Union and on its own or as part of a regional endeavor. 2, seek to consolidate and strengthen relations with African countries with which it had formal relations while pursuing and establishing relations with new ones. And 3, work towards the formal establishment of diplomatic relations with all African states. Cabinet directed the Ministry of External Affairs, International Trade, Civil Aviation and Diaspora Affairs to proceed with the implementation of the said strategy and allow for further discussion on the associated recommendations for engagement with the African continent. Unquote. That was in August of 2023, Mr. Speaker. So this visit was not a product of spontaneous combustion. One early and noteworthy result of this new Africa outreach was that on the 14th of March, 2024, St. Lucia became the first Caribbean country to receive a loan from the Barbados base office of the African Export-Import Bank. This was a loan of $6 million to undertake repairs to schools damaged by Tropical Storm Brett. It is therefore not by some foolish or accident of history, some foolish quote, that this government has sought to deepen relations with Nigeria through a visit by its head of state to St. Lucia. Such visits are standard tools of diplomacy. In the last 6 years, Barbados has entertained state visits from the President of Ghana in June of 2019, Kenya, August 2019, Republic of Rwanda, 2022, and the Republic of Senegal in 2024. And today, the 3rd of July, 2025, Trinidad and Tobago is welcoming the Prime Minister of India, the Honorable Narendra Modi, on a state visit. Nigeria was chosen as one of the countries for initial engagement with Africa because it has the largest population on the continent and one of its strongest economies. It was natural for St. Lucia to gravitate towards Nigeria because of the tremendous potential for meaningful and substantial cooperation between our two countries. The statement from His Excellency President Tinubu to the joint sitting of the Parliament of St. Lucia on Monday, 30th June, in which he offered cooperation and assistance to St. Lucia and OECS member states in a number of critical sectors, is sufficient testament to the soundness of this new foreign policy initiative by St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, it is a fitting response also to those who wondered about the purpose of the visit and those who doubted and expressed skepticism and scorn about whether St. Lucia would gain anything from it. Permit me, Mr. Speaker, to quote from the President's address. And I quote at this juncture, "I wish to express Nigeria's readiness to deepen cooperation with the OECS in areas of mutual interest, including trade, investment, health, culture, education, and climate resilience. Enhanced trade and investment between our regions hold great potential for shared prosperity. Nigeria's vast natural resources and its position as the largest market in Africa present significant opportunities for the OECS, both as a source of essential inputs and as a growing export destination. Together, we can leverage our respective strengths to attract investment, create jobs, and foster joint ventures that benefit both our peoples." Unquote. With the official visit from Nigerian President, St. Lucia and other OECS member states have laid the foundation for a fruitful relationship with the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And this relationship has already borne immediate results. An OECS Nigeria Joint Commission on Education has been established to arrange for St. Lucian and Eastern Caribbean students to receive scholarships to attend Nigerian universities in the forthcoming academic year. And the ministers of tourism of St. Lucia and Nigeria have already met to discuss areas of cooperation in that sector. But, Mr. Speaker, there is a deeper, more fundamental and philosophical reason for St. Lucia to have entertained a visit from the President of Nigeria. It is rooted in our history, in the story of how our forefathers and ancestors were transported in European slave ships from Africa, including the lands of Nigeria and other West African states to St. Lucia, and other Caribbean states to work on European plantations. The tragedy of the slavery of African people in the Western Hemisphere and our connections with Nigeria were eloquently captured by those who addressed the joint sitting of Parliament on Monday, the 30th of June, 2025. First, by Senate President Alvina Reynolds, when she said, and I quote, "Today, your arrival in St. Lucia commences the rediscovery of the bonds between the people of St. Lucia and the people of Nigeria. Today, your visit reignites a mission to reunite us with our homeland and for our people to work together," unquote. Secondly, in the words of Prime Minister, the Honorable Philip Joseph Pierre, and I quote, "Our peoples have been separated, but nothing has ever been able to separate us spiritually and culturally from West Africa, where some of our ancestors came from and for whom our hearts continually yearn. We are African people who have made permanent homes for ourselves on this side of the Atlantic, on the hills and valleys of the plantations on which we were enslaved, and along the seashores, waterways that carried the slave ships which brought us here. We feel untold joy, honor, and pride that our two countries are taking this important step of reconnection at such an important moment in world history, and when the future role of Africa in the modern world can no longer be denied," unquote. Thirdly, by President Tinubu, quote, "As one who feels a profound kinship with our shared African heritage, I am fully aware of the historical currents that have bound us together, currents shaped by the transatlantic slave trade and colonial subjugation, but out of which emerged a shared cultural identity, a resilience and a legacy of aspiration. My presence here today symbolizes Nigeria's renewed commitment to re-engage with these enduring ties. Recognizing the strategic and emotional significance, this occasion serves as a testament to the enduring ideals of Pan-Africanism and to the unyielding desire for unity and collaboration among peoples of African descent," unquote. Mr. Speaker, St. Lucia's Africa policy is therefore also founded on the objective of rekindling our cultural ties with our African motherland, of inculcating in our people a pride and respect for the lands of their ancestors, and of emancipating their minds from the colonial indoctrination that everything African is negative. It is this indoctrination which is behind some of the shameful and disrespectful comments which we have witnessed on social media and some traditional media talk shows with regard to the visit of President Tinubu to St. Lucia. It is our responsibility to lift our people from this ignorance and from the depths to which hateful, petty, and desperate opposition politics has plunged them. For you see, Mr. Speaker, unlike the leader of the opposition, we are not of the view that colonialism had a conscience. It certainly did not. As evidenced by what it did to Africa and our countries here in the Caribbean. Mr. Speaker, Let me now turn my attention to the matter of the national honor bestowed upon the President of Nigeria, His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, St. Lucia's highest honor of a knighthood. This government does not confer St. Lucia's national honors lightly, Mr. Speaker. We are not like the former Prime Minister and member for Miku South, leader of the opposition, who gave the former President of American Airlines, Peter Dolora, the St. Lucia Cross at a time when St. Lucia was paying American Airlines to come to St. Lucia. It is important for us all to recognize the value of diplomacy and expertise it requires, regardless of one's level of experience or background, especially those who claim to be modern-day diplomats. We should strive to approach discussions with professionalism and a shared commitment to constructive dialogue, fostering an environment where respect and understanding can flourish for the benefit of all. And for those who have protested strongly against this honoring knighthood for the President, even more vigorously than they did against his visit itself, let me inform them, Mr. Speaker, that the conferring of national honors to visiting foreign heads of state or government by a receiving country is again a standard and commonly utilized tool of diplomatic practice. It is done to enhance relations between the states, to underscore the close and friendly relations between countries, and to demonstrate the high regard in which the visiting head of state or government is held. For example, Mr. Speaker, in July 2023, the government of Venezuela, led by President Nicolas Maduro, bestowed upon the Prime Minister of Barbados, the Honorable Mia Mottley, during her first official visit to that country, the Order of the Liberators of Venezuela, which is the highest honor of Venezuela. According to the Barbados Foreign Ministry, the two countries were seeking to strengthen relations and increase cooperation. And as fate would have it, Mr. Speaker, today, Prime Minister Modi of India arrives in Trinidad and Tobago for a two-day official visit. And during that period, he will be awarded the country's highest award, the Order of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. The Trinidadian government has justified the award, saying that his visit would bring diverse benefits to Trinidad and Tobago, and that there is nothing preventing the government from conferring the highest award to Prime Minister Modi. It should be noted also that free order CARICOM countries have already bestowed Prime Minister Modi with the country's highest awards. These are Barbados, the Order of Freedom of Barbados, Dominica, Award of Honor, and Guyana, the Order of Excellence of Guyana. Let me also take this opportunity to point out that Trinidad and Tobago has closed all non-essential public services and schools early to facilitate Prime Minister Modi's visit and to minimize traffic congestion. Of even more relevance to St. Lucia is the fact that in 1973, 6 years before St. Lucia's independence, the then Premier of St. Lucia, Sir John Compton, was awarded the Francis de Miranda Award by Venezuelan Foreign Minister Dr. Aristide Calvani, and was later, as Prime Minister, bestowed the Simon Bolivar Award, the Order of the Liberators of Venezuela, by Venezuelan President Carlos Andrés Perez. Did the people of Venezuela ask what Sir John Compton had done for Venezuela? No, Mr. Speaker, because as in the case of Prime Minister Mia Mottley and others who have received such national awards from friendly governments, they know that this advances the cause of cooperation and friendship between countries. And today, the deep friendly relations between Venezuela and St. Lucia, which began with the national honors given to Sir John Compton, still exist, except for the brief period of folly of the Lima Group. And just as the Venezuelan national honors given to Sir John helped create the basis of Venezuela-St. Lucia cooperation, so the knighthood conferred upon President Tinubu will cement the commencement of harmonious and prosperous relations between Nigeria and St. Lucia. Hence, Mr. Speaker, those who should know better about diplomacy and international relations should not be hypocritical in the pronouncements about St. Lucia's current foreign policy actions. I call them hypocritical, Mr. Speaker, for good reason. These same people who have led the song and dance against our advances to Nigeria had themselves decided to establish diplomatic relations with Nigeria. Yes, Mr. Speaker, let me read to you a cabinet conclusion of the 3rd of June, 2019. Of 2019. Read it again. Mr. Speaker, let me read to you a cabinet conclusion of 3rd of June, 2019. And I quote, Cabinet Conclusion 502 of 2019 states that Cabinet considered a memorandum dated 13th May 2019. The opposition occupied the corridors of power at the time, submitted by the Department of External Affairs and approved the request for the establishment of diplomatic relations with Nigeria, unquote. So the member for Miku South and his government decided 6 years ago to establish diplomatic relations with Nigeria. But today, they are trying to make the country believe that this administration's hosting of the Nigerian president is not in St. Lucia's interest, and it is a silly foreign policy decision. Ces hommes opposition, yo tout partout kon poule qui pon, ka di moun kon sa, dat se pate pièce kalte bon bagay pour embrasser Nigeria. Mais c'est yo même qui allé en on cabinet yo, et puis décider pour établir relation diplomatique et puis Nigeria. Mais je dis à nous en pouvoir, président vini, tout partout, tout chaud ba yo. Mais yo prend bloc et yo kay prend pour toujours. Parce que yo ka dérespecter président, yo ka dérespecter moun qui ka visiter nous, ka couyer yo toute qualité non. Mais nous kay adresser ça à sous plateforme avec l'autre côté. But whilst they decided in the cabinet to recognize Nigeria, what is in fact indisputable is that although they decided on establishing diplomatic relations with Nigeria, they did nothing about it. Nothing came of it because of the incompetence. It took the wise diplomacy and leadership of Philip Joseph Pierre, Prime Minister and member for Kaswis East, to advance St. Lucia-Nigeria relations in the spectacular manner we observed this week with the highly successful official visit of President Tinubu. So as I prepare to take my brief statement to its logical conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I wish to say that a new era has begun in St. Lucia's relations with the countries of the African continent. And members opposite better get used to it. They better brace themselves, because we are going to continue to improve our relations with our motherland to ensure we create an improved framework for us to match our basic need with greater possibilities. St. Lucia's diplomacy is actively pursuing its goal of advancing the country's national interest through the forging of new alliances. And what better alliance to build than one with our long-lost brothers from Nigeria? Mr. Speaker, I thank you for granting me leave to make this brief statement.